The moon was still high when Abini arrived early. Night had not fully left the land. The sky was deep blue, heavy with stars. Cold wind moved through the tall grass of the savannah, making a soft whispering sound, like spirits talking among themselves. Far away, a drum beat slowly from another village, dum, 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 like a heart that refused to sleep. Abini stopped walking. Her eyes fixed on something that made her breath catch. A car. It stood outside the old red mud council house, its metal body dark and silent under the moonlight. Dust covered its sides. The tires still held fresh marks on the earth. Abini frowned. She had been sent by the Queen Mother to arrive before sunrise. No one was supposed to be there yet. The elders had agreed. The hunters were still in the forest. The council house should have been empty, quiet, waiting. But the car was there. And Abini knew it well. It belonged to Queen Zola. Abini's heart beat faster. Queen Zola was not expected until midday. Everyone knew that. The ancestors had been consulted. The date was fixed. Nothing was to change. Yet here was the Queen's car, waiting like a silent warning. The wind grew stronger. Abini pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. The air smelled of dry grass, old wood, and something else, burning herbs. Someone was inside. Abini stepped softly, careful not to make a sound. Her leather sandals barely touched the ground. She moved like a shadow, as her grandmother had taught her when she was still a child learning the ways of listening. The council house stood old and proud. Its walls were cracked, painted with ancient symbols of snakes, suns, and spirits. At night, the symbols seemed alive, moving when the firelight touched them. Abini reached the door. She stopped. Voices. Low voices. Serious voices. She leaned closer, her ear near the wooden door that had heard secrets for hundreds of years. Inside, a fire crackled. She could hear it clearly now. Crack, hiss, crack. Then a voice spoke. A woman's voice. Strong. Calm. Dangerous. It was Queen Zola. The ancestors are restless, the Queen said. They do not accept the path we walk. Abini's eyes widened. Another voice answered. An elder's voice. Old. Shaking. But Your Majesty, the elder said, the ritual was sealed long ago. The girl was chosen by signs. Blood cannot be returned once given. Abini felt cold spread through her chest. The girl. Blood. Queen Zola laughed softly, but there was no joy in it. Chosen, she said. Or forced. Speak truthfully, Elder Marken. This house still remembers lies. There was silence. The fire popped loudly. Then footsteps. Someone moved closer to the door. Abini stepped back quickly, pressing herself against the mud wall, holding her breath. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared they would hear it. The door did not open. The footsteps turned away. She released her breath slowly. Inside, Elder Marken spoke again, his voice heavy with fear. The prophecy spoke of balance, he said. A black woman born under twin moons. A woman who walks between worlds. We believed the sacrifice would save the kingdom. Abini's hands trembled. She had been born under twin moons. Every child in the region knew that story. The drums had played all night when she was born. The sky had split into silver light. The elders had whispered her name with caution. She swallowed hard. Queen Zola's voice lowered, thick with pain. And what if the prophecy was misunderstood? The Queen asked. What if the ancestors wanted protection, not death? A long silence followed. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. Leaves danced across the ground. Somewhere, an owl cried. Abini felt the world shift. Then she heard something that made her blood freeze. The girl arrived early, another voice said suddenly. A man's voice. Sharp. A hunter. She is nearby. I smell her. Abini's heart nearly stopped. Her body moved before her mind could think. She turned and ran. She ran past the car, past the tall grass, past the ancient baobab tree that watched over the council house like a silent ancestor. Her breath burned in her chest. The night seemed to chase her, shadows stretching long and hungry. She did not stop until she reached the edge of the forest. There, she leaned against a tree, gasping. Sweat covered her skin despite the cold. Her ears rang. They were talking about her. She knew it now. Her mother's warnings returned to her mind. If the elders call you before sunrise, child, do not answer. If drums beat without hands, hide. Your life is tied to old things that do not sleep. Abini slid down to the ground, hugging her knees. She had lived her life quietly. She gathered herbs. She listened to elders. She honored ancestors. She never wanted power, never wanted prophecy. Yet prophecy had found her. From deep within the forest, a low sound rose. Boom, boom, boom. Drums. Not village drums. Spirit drums. The earth trembled beneath her feet. The trees shook. Fireflies filled the air, glowing like floating stars. Abini lifted her head slowly. The ancestors were awake, and they were calling her. Far behind her, at the council house, Queen Zola stepped outside into the night. She looked toward the forest, her face lit by firelight and sorrow. She has heard, the queen whispered. The wind carried the words into the darkness. Abini closed her eyes. Her life would never be the same again. And the secret she overheard would soon shake the kingdom, the spirits, and the fate of everyone bound to ancient blood. The forest did not sleep. As Abini stood among the tall trees, the night breathed around her. Leaves rustled without wind. Branches creaked like old bones. The spirit drums continued their slow, heavy rhythm, boom, 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 rising from deep within the earth. Abini wiped sweat from her face. Her heart still raced from what she had heard. Every word spoken inside the council house echoed in her mind like a curse that refused to fade. The girl was chosen. Blood cannot be returned. She arrived early. They were talking about her. There was no doubt now. Abini pushed herself to her feet. The ground beneath her felt warm, as if something moved below the soil. She remembered the old teachings. When the earth grows warm at night, spirits walk close. She wrapped her cloak tighter and moved deeper into the forest. The moon slipped behind thick clouds. Darkness swallowed the path. Only fireflies guided her way, blinking softly like small eyes watching her steps. She needed answers. There was only one person who might speak the truth without fear. Grandmother Sawa, the oldest woman in the village. Older than the Queen Mother. Older than some trees. They said she once spoke directly to ancestors and lived. Abini walked for a long time. Her legs burned. Thorns scratched her skin. Night insects sang loudly, filling the air with sharp sounds. Somewhere, a hyena laughed, long and cruel. Then she smelled smoke. Warm. Familiar. She followed it until she saw a small hut hidden between rocks and roots. A fire burned outside, low and steady. Dried herbs hung from wooden poles. Bones and shells lay arranged in careful circles. Grandmother Sawa sat beside the fire. Her back was bent, but her eyes were sharp. White hair fell like spider webs around her face. She did not look surprised when Abini stepped forward. "I knew you would come," the old woman said calmly. Abini fell to her knees. "Grandmother," she whispered. "They want to kill me." The fire cracked loudly. Grandmother Sawa stirred the embers with a stick. Sparks flew into the air. "Not kill," she said slowly. "Transform." Abini looked up, fear shining in her eyes. "What does that mean?" The old woman sighed. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening. "Long ago," Sawa began, "before queens wore crowns and men ruled with spears, the spirits walked openly among us. Balance was kept by listeners, women who heard both worlds." Abini swallowed. "The prophecy," she said softly. "Yes," Sawa nodded. "You were born under twin moons because you carry two paths. 1 foot in flesh, 1 foot in spirit." Abini shook her head. "I never asked for this." "No one chosen ever does," Sawa replied. The drums grew louder, closer. Boom, boom, boom. Abini clutched her chest. "They said blood was given," she said. "What blood?" Grandmother Sawa's face darkened. "The kingdom once faced a terrible drought," she said. "Rivers dried. Crops died. Spirits turned away. The elders feared collapse. She leaned closer. They offered a listener to the ancestors. A living bridge. A sacrifice that bound her spirit forever. Abini's breath broke. You mean, death? Worse, Sawa said. She lived. But never fully. Her body remained. Her soul belonged to the other side. Abini's stomach twisted. And Queen Zola? She asked. Why is she involved? The old woman stared into the fire. Queen Zola was once a listener herself, she said quietly. Before the crown. Before power. Abini gasped. That is impossible. Nothing is impossible to ancestors, Sawa replied. Zola refused the final binding. She ran. Another girl was taken in her place. The wind howled suddenly, angry. Abini understood now. Queen Zola carried guilt. And fear. Footsteps echoed nearby. Sawa's head snapped up. They are coming, she whispered. Abini turned. Torches flickered between trees. Men's voices. Hunters. Warriors. They followed me, Abini said, panic rising. Sawa grabbed Abini's hand. Her grip was strong, surprising. Listen carefully, she said. You must go to the riverlands before dawn. The water spirits still remember truth. What about you? Sawa smiled sadly. I'm already half gone. Shouts grew louder. Spread out, a man yelled. Sawa pushed Abini toward a narrow path hidden by vines. Run, she ordered. Abini hesitated. Sawa. Run. Abini turned and fled. Behind her, the old woman stood tall by the fire. She raised her arms and began to chant. The air vibrated. The fire flared high, blinding. Abini heard screams. Then silence. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs shook. At last, she reached the riverlands. Mist rose from dark water. Frogs croaked loudly. The river flowed slow and deep, glowing faintly under the moon. She collapsed by the shore. The water rippled. A voice rose from it. Soft, female, ancient. Child of two paths, it whispered. Your blood was promised, but promises can be broken. Abini stared into the water, tears falling freely. Tell me how, she begged. The river shimmered. Only by facing the truth hidden by kings and elders, the voice said. And by choosing sacrifice or freedom. Far away, horns sounded from the village. The hunt had begun. Abini stood slowly. Her fear was turning into something else. Strength. The ancestors were watching. And they were waiting for her choice. Dawn crept slowly across the riverlands. Grey light spread over the water like thin cloth. Mist floated low, curling around Abini's legs as she stood at the riverbank. The voice of the water spirit still echoed in her ears. Promises can be broken. Abini touched the river with her fingers. It was cold, yet alive. Small ripples formed, moving against the flow, as if the river itself was thinking. Behind her, the forest remained dark. Drums had gone quiet, but the silence felt heavy, waiting. Abini straightened her back. She would not run anymore. She stepped into the river. Cold water wrapped around her ankles, then her knees. The river hummed softly, like a song without words. Colors appeared beneath the surface, blue, green, silver, twisting together. The water rose to her waist. A listener does not drown, the river spirit whispered. She remembers. Suddenly, the water pulled her down. Abini gasped, but fear did not take her. Instead, the river opened. She sank into a glowing world. Below the surface, the river was wide and endless. Light came from nowhere and everywhere. Shapes moved like shadows made of water. Faces formed, then faded. Ancestors. Women and men with deep eyes. Warriors with spears. Queens with crowns of clay and gold. Children holding drums. All watching her. One figure stepped forward. A young woman. Her face was calm but sad. Her eyes held centuries. I am Nalia, the spirit said. The one who was given. Abini's chest tightened. You were the sacrifice, she whispered. Nalia nodded. I was chosen to replace another, she said. A girl who ran. Abini knew. Queen Zola. Yes, Nalia replied. She fled before the final binding. The elders feared the ancestors' anger. They took me instead. Did it save the kingdom? Abini asked. Nalia looked away. For a time, she said. Rain returned. Crops grew. But the balance was false. A wound hidden under cloth. Nalia reached out and touched Abini's forehead. Pain flashed. Abini saw visions. She saw young Zola kneeling before elders, tears streaming down her face. She saw chains of spirit light wrapping around her body, then breaking as Zola screamed and ran. She saw Nalia being dragged to the sacred stone. She heard her cries as drums drowned her voice. She felt the binding tear her soul. Abini fell to her knees in the water. This is wrong, she sobbed. The ancestors know, Nalia said gently. That is why they call you. The river shook. But the elders will never release power, Abini said. They fear change. Nalia smiled sadly. Then the truth must be shown, she said. The water darkened. From the depths rose a stone, black, smooth, covered in glowing symbols. The stone of voices, Nalia said. It holds memories they buried. Abini touched it. The stone burned cold in her hands. Take it to the mountain shrine, Nalia instructed. There, truth cannot be silenced. The river began to push Abini upward. One more thing, Abini said desperately. What must I sacrifice? Nalia met her eyes. Fear, she answered. And obedience. The world spun. Abini burst from the river, gasping. She collapsed on the bank, soaked and shaking, the stone clutched tightly in her arms. The sun had fully risen now. Birds cried loudly. Life continued, unaware. Footsteps approached. Abini turned sharply. Queen Zola stood at the edge of the reeds. She wore no crown. No guards followed her. Her eyes were red from sleeplessness. So, the queen said softly, the river chose you too. Abini rose slowly. You were a listener, Abini said. You ran. Zola flinched. I was young, she whispered. I was afraid. You let another girl take your place. Silence fell. Zola fell to her knees. I did, she said, voice breaking. Every night I hear her screams in my dreams. Abini held the stone up. The truth will be revealed, she said. At the mountain shrine. Zola looked at the stone and gasped. They hid that, she said. They swore it was destroyed. Will you stand with me? Abini asked. Zola closed her eyes. Yes, she said. Even if it ends my reign. Suddenly, horns blared. Warriors burst from the trees. Elders followed, faces hard with fear and anger. There she is. Elder Markan shouted. Seize the girl. Zola stood and raised her arms. Enough, she commanded. The warriors hesitated. She carries forbidden truth, Markan hissed. She threatens the kingdom. Abini stepped forward. No, she said clearly. Lies threaten the kingdom. The stone began to glow brighter. The ground trembled. The ancestors were moving. And the path ahead would break everything the elders had built. The ground shook harder. Dust rose around Abini's feet as the stone of voices glowed white-hot in her hands. Symbols moved across its surface like living fire. The warriors stepped back, fear flashing across their faces. Elder Markan lifted his staff and struck the ground. Do not be fooled, he shouted. That stone carries madness. Seize her. No one moved. The air felt thick, heavy with unseen eyes. Birds fled from the trees. The river behind them began to churn. Queen Zola stepped beside Abini. She will not be touched, Zola said firmly. By my order. Markan's face twisted. You protect her because you fear your own past, he spat. This girl will destroy everything we built. Abini looked at the elders, her voice steady but strong. You built it on stolen blood, she said. The ancestors remember. The stone pulsed. A deep sound rolled across the land, not drums, not thunder, but something older. The mountain called. From the east, the distant peaks rose into the sky, their tops hidden in cloud. Wind rushed down from them, carrying cold and ancient whispers. "The shrine," Queen Zola said softly. "It has awakened." Marken's eyes widened. "No," he murmured. "It must not be opened." The earth split slightly beneath their feet. There was no more choice. The journey began. They traveled toward the mountains under a burning sun. Abini walked at the front, the stone heavy against her chest. Queen Zola walked beside her. Warriors followed, silent and uneasy. Elders trailed behind, whispering among themselves. The land changed as they climbed. Savannah gave way to rocky hills. Trees grew thin and twisted. The air became sharp and thin. Clouds moved low, brushing their faces like spirits passing close. At night, they camped beneath stars that seemed closer than ever. Fires burned blue instead of red. The wind spoke in voices. Abini could not sleep. Each night, she dreamed of Nalia, standing on the sacred stone, chains of light wrapped around her body. "Do not turn away," Nalia whispered. "Even when it hurts." On the third night, the drums returned. Boom, boom, boom. Not from the earth this time, but from the mountain itself. At dawn, they reached the shrine. It stood carved into the mountain's face, ancient beyond memory. Giant stone doors were marked with the same symbols as the stone Abini carried. Broken offerings lay scattered, untouched for generations. As Abini stepped forward, the doors groaned and opened on their own. Darkness waited inside. "Only truth may enter," a deep voice echoed from within. Elder Marken rushed forward. "I speak truth," he cried. "I have served the ancestors all my life." The ground beneath him cracked. A force threw him back. He fell hard, coughing blood. The voice spoke again. "Service without honesty is hollow." Abini walked inside. Queen Zola followed. Inside the shrine, fire ignited without flame. Light filled the chamber. The walls became alive with moving images. The past revealed itself. The elders gasped as they saw the truth laid bare. They saw Nalia's sacrifice. They saw lies spoken in council. They saw blood rituals twisted for control, not balance. Cries filled the chamber. "This was necessary," one elder screamed. "The kingdom would have fallen." The mountain trembled. Abini stepped onto the central stone. "No," she said, tears streaming. "You chose fear over faith." The images shifted. They showed drought, but also another path. A path where the elders released power, where women listeners guided balance without sacrifice. The elders fell silent. Queen Zola dropped to her knees. "I failed," she whispered. "I ran. And others paid." The voice spoke once more. "Will you now pay the debt?" Silence filled the shrine. Then a new voice rose, Nalia's. "I am tired," she said. "Release me." The stone Abini carried cracked. Light exploded. Abini screamed as pain tore through her. She felt chains wrap around her soul, pulling her toward the spirit world. Queen Zola reached for her. "No," she cried. Abini understood. The final binding demanded replacement. To free Nalia, another listener must take her place. Tears streamed down Abini's face. She looked at Queen Zola, then at the elders, then at the mountain. "I will not repeat your sin," she said. She turned to the ancestors. "I offer myself," Abini declared. "But not in chains. I choose this path." The mountain went silent. The ancestors waited. And the price of truth hovered in the air, sharp and unforgiving. The shrine held its breath. Light and shadow twisted around Abini as she stood on the sacred stone. The cracked stone of voices floated before her, spinning slowly. Wind roared through the chamber though no doors were open. The elders fell back in terror. "This is madness." Elder Marken cried. "She cannot choose this. The ritual demands obedience." Abini lifted her chin. "No," she said clearly. "The old ways were broken when obedience replaced truth." The mountain shook. Queen Zola pushed herself to her feet, tears streaking her face. "Then take me," she said suddenly. I ran once. I will not run again. Gasps echoed through the shrine. Zola stepped forward, removing the beads from her neck and dropping them onto the stone. I was born a listener, she said. I abandoned my duty and took a crown instead. I will repay the debt. The spirits stirred. A voice like thunder filled the shrine. Debt is not paid by fear, it said. Nor by power. Nalia appeared between them, glowing softly, her chains trembling. Both of you carry truth, Nalia said. But the wound was made by choice. It must be healed by choice. Abini closed her eyes. She felt the pull again, stronger now. Her feet lifted slightly from the stone. Cold wrapped around her heart. Images flooded her mind. She saw the kingdom without her, fields dry, elders returning to control, truth buried again. She saw herself bound, alive but lost, like Nalia. She saw another path. A path where sacrifice was not demanded from one alone. Abini opened her eyes. I will not be the last chain, she said. She turned to the elders. You taught the people fear. Now you will learn humility. She raised her hands. The stone shattered. A shockwave rippled through the shrine. The walls cracked. Elders screamed as memories poured into them, every lie, every hidden ritual, every stolen decision. They fell to the ground, clutching their heads. Enough, they cried. The ancestors' voices rose together. Balance is shared, they said. Not carried by one. The mountain roared. Chains around Nalia shattered into light. She screamed, not in pain, but release. Her form lifted, glowing brighter, until she dissolved into countless sparks that filled the shrine. Rain began to fall inside the mountain. Queen Zola collapsed, sobbing. It's over, she whispered. But the ground split beneath Abini. She screamed as she fell into darkness. Queen Zola lunged forward but was thrown back by a wall of light. Abini, she cried. Abini fell through swirling mist and voices. She landed hard on stone. Silence followed. Slowly, she opened her eyes. She stood in a wide-open space beneath the mountain. A circle of ancestors surrounded her. No chains. No pain. A voice spoke gently. You broke the cycle, it said. But every breaking leaves a scar. Abini nodded. What is the price? She asked. You will walk both worlds, the voice said. Never fully belonging to one. Abini thought of the village. The forest. The river. I accept, she said. Light wrapped around her. Above, the shrine collapsed, but did not destroy. It reshaped. When the dust settled, the elders emerged changed, faces aged, eyes humbled. Queen Zola stood alone, staring at the sky. The drums stopped. The ancestors withdrew. And the kingdom stood at the edge of a new beginning, uncertain, fragile, but free. The sun rose slowly over the mountains. Its light touched the land with care, as if the earth itself was healing. Mist lifted from the valleys. Birds returned to the sky. The wind no longer howled, it whispered. At the foot of the mountain, the people gathered. Hunters, farmers, mothers, children, warriors, and elders stood together in silence. They had felt the mountain shake. They had heard the drums stop. They knew something ancient had ended. Queen Zola stepped forward. Her crown was gone. She wore simple cloth now, the kind worn by ordinary women. Her shoulders looked lighter, yet her eyes carried deep weight. The old council is finished, she announced. No elder will rule in shadow again. Murmurs moved through the crowd like waves. The ancestors have spoken, she continued. Truth has been hidden for too long. Blood was taken without choice. Power was held with fear. She lowered her head. I was part of that silence. Tears fell freely down her face. I will remain queen only if the people wish it, she said. And if I rule by listening, not command. The people exchanged looks. Then an old farmer stepped forward. We are tired of fear, he said. Let truth guide us now. Others nodded. Suddenly, the ground behind the queen shimmered. Light appeared. A figure stepped forward. Abini. She looked the same, and yet different. Her eyes held depth like the river. Her presence felt calm, steady, powerful. The wind moved gently around her, as if greeting an old friend. Gasps filled the crowd. She lives, someone whispered. Abini raised her hand. I walk, she said, but not as before. She looked at the people she had known all her life. I am no longer only of flesh, she continued. And no longer only of spirit. I am between. Silence followed. She turned to Queen Zola. The ancestors did not demand another sacrifice, Abini said. They demanded an end to lies. Zola knelt. Forgive me, she whispered. Abini placed a hand on her shoulder. Forgiveness grows from truth, she replied. Not from forgetting. The elders who had survived stepped forward slowly. Their backs were bent. Their faces showed shame. We were wrong, Elder Markan said, his voice weak. We feared losing power more than losing balance. Abini met his eyes. Power that fears truth is already broken, she said. The elders lowered their staffs and placed them on the ground. That day, the council was changed. No decision would be made without women. No ritual without consent. No prophecy without questioning. The listeners would return, but none would be bound. Abini walked through the village as night fell. Fires burned warmly. Drums played again, not in fear, but celebration. Children danced. Elders told stories honestly, without secrets hidden in shadows. She stopped at the river. The water glowed softly. You did well, the river spirit whispered. I only listened, Abini replied. The spirit laughed gently. That is how worlds change. Abini knew she could never fully return to her old life. Dreams would always carry voices. The wind would always speak to her. But she was not alone anymore. The burden had become shared. Days turned into seasons. Rain returned on time. Crops grew strong. The land breathed easier. Queen Zola ruled differently now. She walked among the people. She asked questions. She listened. Sometimes, she and Abini sat together under the baobab tree, watching the sun set. I once thought strength was running away, Zola said one evening. Abini smiled softly. True strength is staying, she replied. And facing what hurts. On the anniversary of Nalia's release, the people gathered at the riverlands. They sang. They poured water onto the earth. They spoke her name with honor, not shame. No chains. No blood. Only memory. As the moon rose, twin moons appeared again in the sky, just for a moment. The ancestors were watching. And they were at peace.